Hey everyone, Brett McKay here from theartofmanliness.com, and I'm here today with the man-to-man video. Man-to-man is where I take questions from Art of Manliness readers on just about anything and give my bit of advice man-to-man. And today's question comes from Nick, and Nick writes, my question is about dealing with stress and entrepreneurship. From reading some of your posts on starting up AOM, I know it was a stressful time. I am in roughly the same boat. I have a wife and son who's 6 months, and I joined a startup after losing my last job. Nick writes that the business is doing very well and things are looking up. However, I still find myself swinging between two extremes. On the one hand, extreme optimism about the business and how things are going. On the other hand, feeling like a complete failure, worthlessness, and how I'll never be able to provide value to anyone. So my questions are, what level of stress did you feel starting Art of Manliness? And two, did you ever find an effective way to combat it? Great questions, Nick. I think to clarify before we begin, I think the stress that you're talking about is not the stress of sort of handling the day-to-day working at a startup. It sounds like the stress that you're talking about is that fear of failure, that anxiety that things are just going to not work out and what you're going to do if that happens. I think it's a common stressor, common fear that a lot of men who are entrepreneurs or working in a startup, or if you just have like a regular job, 9 to 5, there's always that looming possibility of failure and what that means to you and your family. So in regards to your first question, what level of stress did I experience when I started the Art of Manliness? Honestly, not that much, because I started while I was in law school. It was the Art of Manliness at the very beginning was primarily a hobby, wasn't a business. My goal at the time was to graduate law school, get a job as an attorney, and be an attorney for the rest of my life. But the Art of Manliness grew, picked up steam, to the point where by the time I graduated law school, it was a full-fledged business, and I could do, it was an option for me to work on it full-time as my job, and that's what I did. So I didn't experience that stress at the beginning. I certainly do now at times. So in regards to your second question, what have I found, or what ways have I found to combat that stress or that fear of failure? The big key for me is working on boosting my mental and emotional resilience. And a few years ago, we did an in-depth series on how to do just that. We wrote posts on different cognitive tools and techniques you can use just to be more resilient and have less anxiety about failure in your life. And here's a few things that have helped me a lot, and I think it will help you out a lot what I get from your letter. The first one is we did a post on how you shouldn't catastrophize, and catastrophizing is whenever you make these sort of illogical leaps when you think about consequences, of worst case scenarios, and you tend to focus on the worst case scenario. And often those worst case scenarios are just completely illogical. So for example, you might be thinking, man, this startup could go under, and then I'll lose a job, won't have any income, and then if this happens, then my family, you start making these sort of leaps of logic, like, oh, we'll have to move out of our apartment or our house, and then my wife will leave me, and then I'll be completely miserable. Catastrophizing is a lot like those direct TV commercials you've seen where people start off losing their cable and then they become a ninja, they start karate, and then they become a superhero, and then they fall through a plate of glass onto a dinner table. That's catastrophizing. It's a great example of catastrophizing. So don't catastrophize. Just focus on the positive. Think, if things don't work out, realize and understand that, you're going to be okay. It sounds like you got a great head on your shoulders, you're ambitious, you lost one job, but you've bounced right back and found another, and you're working at a startup. So if the startup doesn't work out, that's gonna suck, but I think in the long run, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna find something else. You're gonna adapt. So don't catastrophize. The second thing that you can do to help boost your resilience in regards to your startup and the anxiety you feel with it is don't put all your value and worth as a man in the success or failure of this startup. And I think a lot of men in America have this problem because in America, we're a capitalistic society. And as a consequence, we value people, particularly men, on how well they perform in the marketplace. So if you're rich and you're successful, then you are a really manly guy. You are the alpha male. But if you fail, then yeah, you're not a man. And I think that's sort of a silly notion of masculinity. There's more to being a man than just how much money you make. So, the first step, my first bit of advice is just reject that idea that your value as a man depends on your success in the market, sort of this anonymous marketplace. Instead, focus on what's really important. Focus on those relationships, like your marriage, your relationship with your children. Focus on your relationship with your friends, your honor group. Focus on your relationship with people in your community. Things that are really really important. And so while I encourage you to do all you can, give it your all with this startup, at the same time, don't neglect those important relationships with your wife, with your kids, with your friends, etc. Because I know a lot of men who have, they put all their effort and all their focus in life on their career, and while neglecting their marriage, their children, their friendship, and for some reason their career goes kaput, right? They get laid off, the business goes bottom up, belly up, and in the end, they're left with nothing, right? They don't have their wife left them, their kids don't want to have a relationship with them because they didn't nurture those they didn't nurture those relationships. My advice to you is, work on those other aspects of your life. Just, you are not your business or the success of your business. And not only just focus on this relationship, but also have hobbies outside the business, right? Just because you fail at one part of your life, just because the business doesn't succeed, doesn't mean you can be a successful father, a successful husband, or a great friend. So, Nick, that's my advice. First is to read that series on resilience. Don't place all your value or worth as a man in the success of your business. Nurture those the really important things in life, and don't catastrophize. All right, Nick, so that's my bit of advice. Don't catastrophize. Second bit of advice is nurture, don't put all your value or worth as a man in the success of this business. Just because, the startup goes bottom, belly up, doesn't mean that you're a failure as a man. You can also be a great husband, a great father, a great friend. So focus on those things that are really, really important. So that's my advice. If any of you who are watching have any advice from Nick, I'd love to hear your comments below. And if you have a question that you would like answered on Man to Man, mail me a letter at Art of Manliness, P.O. Box 978, Jenks, Oklahoma 74037. And until next time, this is Brett McKay telling you to stay manly.